Every night the same chair. Every night the same blanket. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am 74 years old. And this is the story of the one thing I did every day that no one ever thought to question. I worked for 32 years as a library assistant in a small town in Pennsylvania. Quiet job, quiet building, quiet life. I liked it that way. Books don't rush you. They don't interrupt. They don't leave. I married young, loved deeply, lost early. My husband Frank passed away from a stroke when I was 52. After that, the house became too large for one voice. But I stayed, because leaving felt like losing him twice. I had children, 2 sons, both grown, both busy. They called on holidays, sometimes. Visited when life slowed down, rarely. I never complained. Mothers from my generation didn't. As the years passed, my body betrayed me in quiet ways. Arthritis first, then breathing issues, then dizziness that came without warning. The doctor used words like monitoring and assisted living. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be a burden. That's how I ended up in Maple Grove Care Center. Clean halls, soft lighting, friendly staff, a place designed to feel like home without actually being one. I brought very little with me. Clothes, photos, one knitted blanket, blue, slightly faded. I placed it carefully over the wooden chair in my room. Every single day, the nurses noticed. They always do, but they never asked. Until Sarah. Sarah Miller was in her late 20s. A registered nurse with tired eyes and a gentle voice. She introduced herself on my first night. "Hi, Mrs. Brooks. I'll be your night nurse." "Night nurse?" I smiled. Nights are when the heart speaks loudest. Sarah noticed small things. The way I stared at the window after sunset. The way my hands shook when the lights dimmed. The way I always folded the blanket just right. "One evening," she said softly, "you're very careful with that chair." I shrugged. "It gets cold." She nodded, but she didn't believe me. My sons visited once during my first month. They brought flowers, spoke politely, looked uncomfortable. They stood. They never sat in the chair. I didn't offer it. Nights were the hardest. The quiet pressed in. Memories don't sleep. I would sit on the bed, staring at that chair, the blanket waiting, like it always did. Sarah came in every 2 hours, checked vitals, adjusted pillows. Sometimes she lingered. One night, she asked, "Do you sleep well?" I smiled. Enough. Another lie. The truth was, I didn't sleep much at all. Some nights, when the ache in my chest grew heavy, I would move to the chair. I would wrap the blanket around my shoulders, and I would cry, quietly, carefully, so no one would hear. I cried for my husband, for the house I left behind, for my sons, not because they were cruel, but because they were absent. I cried because loneliness has weight, and someone has to carry it. I always put the blanket back in the morning, neatly, like nothing happened. Sarah noticed something else. The blanket was warmer in the mornings. One night, I didn't manage to hide it in time. Sarah walked in early. She saw me sitting in the chair, blanket tight around me, my face wet. She didn't speak. She didn't rush. She just pulled up a stool and sat in front of me, at eye level. "You don't have to explain," she said. Her voice was steady. "Safe." That's when something broke inside me. Not loudly. Just enough to finally let the truth out. "I didn't want anyone to see," I whispered. She nodded. "I know." We sat like that for a long time. No clipboard, no chart. Just 2 women and a shared silence. After that night, Sarah started bringing tea. She'd sit with me a few extra minutes. She never mentioned the chair, but she always made sure the blanket was there. Weeks passed. then months. My health declined slowly. I grew weaker, but I didn't feel as alone. One afternoon, Sarah helped me adjust the blanket. She paused, then finally asked, "Was the chair for comfort or for something else?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I told someone the truth. "That chair," I said, "was where I went when I couldn't pretend anymore." She didn't interrupt. I didn't want my sons to know I continued, and I didn't want the staff to worry. So I cried there every night. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That blanket I finished wasn't for warmth. It was for the nights I cried alone. She reached for my hand, held it, didn't let go. I didn't know then that she would be the one to tell my story after I was gone. But she would. And when she did, everyone would finally understand why that chair was never empty. After that night, something changed. Not the room, not the chair, not the blanket, me. I stopped pretending that I was fine, at least with Sarah. She didn't treat me differently. That mattered. She still checked my blood pressure, still reminded me to drink water, still joked softly when I forgot where my glasses were. But now, she saw me. My sons didn't notice the change. They called less, visited not at all. I stopped checking the calendar. Hope can be exhausting. Winter came early that year. The window frosted over at night. Sarah noticed how my breathing worsened. The doctors adjusted medication, used careful words that sound gentle when they mean limited time. I overheard them once. "She's declining." I wasn't offended. I was relieved, because declining means the waiting is ending. The chair became harder to reach. Some nights I couldn't make it there, so Sarah helped. She never said why. She just brought the blanket, wrapped it around me, sat nearby. We talked about small things, her childhood, my library days, books we loved, and sometimes we talked about nothing, which is its own kind of comfort. One night she asked quietly, "Do you regret not telling your sons?" I thought for a long time. "No," I said. They didn't ask. A few days later, my eldest son called. Daniel. His voice sounded rushed. "Mom, I heard you're not doing great." I smiled. I've had worse days. He promised to visit. He didn't. Sarah saw my face after the call. She didn't say "I'm sorry." She said, "Do you want tea or soup?" That's how love sounds sometimes. My strength faded. The chair stayed. The blanket stayed. Sarah stayed. One evening, she adjusted the chair closer to my bed. "So you don't have to choose," she said. I understood. The last night came quietly. No alarms, no rush, just the hum of machines and the soft light of the hallway. Sarah was on shift. Of course she was. I asked her to help me into the chair one last time. She hesitated. "You're tired," she said gently. "I know," I replied. "That's why." She helped me sit, wrapped the blanket around my shoulders, kneeled in front of me. "You don't have to cry tonight," she said. I smiled. "I'm not," I said. "I'm remembering." I talked about my husband, my boys as children, the library, the smell of old books and rainy days. Sarah listened. The chair held me. The blanket warmed me. When I closed my eyes, I wasn't alone. I passed peacefully in that chair, with the blanket, with someone who knew why it mattered. After I was gone, my sons came. Too late. They stood in the room, not knowing where to look. One of them pointed at the chair. "What's with that blanket?" he asked. Sarah answered, her voice steady, respectful, honest. She put it there every night, she said. For the nights she cried alone. The room went silent. No defense, no excuses, just truth. They didn't sit. They didn't touch the chair. They left quietly. Sarah folded the blanket, placed it one last time, Some things don't need words. After Eleanor Brooks passed away, her room stayed empty for 3 days. Not because there was no one to clear it, but because Sarah couldn't bring herself to touch the chair. The blanket was still there, folded, careful, waiting. The care center followed protocol. Personal belongings packed, paperwork signed, life moving forward. But grief doesn't follow schedules. Sarah finally entered the room alone. She closed the door behind her, sat in the chair. For the first time, she understood then. The silence, the weight, why Eleanor never wanted witnesses. A week later, Eleanor's sons returned. Not to mourn, to ask questions. We didn't know it was this bad, Daniel said. The room felt smaller. Sarah stood calmly. You didn't ask, she replied. Not cruel, just honest. They noticed the chair, the blanket. Again, that blanket the younger son said. She always had it. Yes, Sarah answered, for what Daniel asked. Sarah took a breath. She remembered Eleanor's words. Tell the truth when I'm gone. That chair, Sarah said, was where your mother went when she couldn't pretend anymore. They froze. She cried there, Sarah continued. Almost every night, with that blanket, so no one would see. The room filled with shame. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. She didn't want to worry you, Sarah added softly, so she carried it alone. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. They left without arguing, without defending themselves. Some truths don't invite debate. Sarah donated the blanket, not to charity, to the care center's quiet room, a place where residents could sit when the nights felt too long. She attached a small note for anyone who needs to cry without being seen. Months passed. New patients came. New stories formed. But the chair stayed. The blanket stayed. And sometimes someone would sit there, wrapped in blue, feeling understood without ever knowing why. Sarah still thinks of Eleanor. On night shifts, when the halls are quiet, she learned something Eleanor never said out loud. Vulnerability doesn't ask for attention. It asks for safety. Some people cry loudly. Others leave blankets on chairs. YouTube ending is requested. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who hides their pain quietly, like this video, subscribe for more emotional real-life stories. Comment below what silent habit hides your deepest feeling, because sometimes the loudest pain is the one no one asks.